What happened to the ceasefire in Gaza?
I think it all goes back to Netanyahu and his personal problems and his coalition that wants genocide. Netanyahu needs to stay in power, and that's why the genocide began in the first place. If the Israeli regime was smart, sinister but smart, it would have, after October the 7th, in my opinion, carried out a few weeks of slaughter and genocide, but then after a couple of months, it would have ended it and said, look, we've punished them, we've punished the Hamas and its Islamic Jihad and its allies, and the rape, the fake rape stories and the fake beheading stories would have still been believed, and they would have ended it and pinned the blame on the resistance and for the to the and said, look, the Gazans have suffered because of what they did, and then they would have negotiated and exchanged some prisoners in Palestinians in Israeli jails, and the Israeli prisoners would have been released. That would have been the smart thing to do, especially since they have the West on their side, they have the Western media on their side, and most of the Arab governments are not sympathetic to the Palestinian people. None of them are really. Not even Qatar. Qatar, the same Qatar that uses Al Jazeera to show images of Gaza and which is sympathetic, the same Qatar bombed Yemen, helped the Americans bomb Yemen, where the Yemens were trying to help the Palestinians. So, but he needed to stay in power, and his coalition wanted the genocide to go on. They needed him, and he needed them. And so the genocide continued. And back then, that was also why I believed that the war was going to expand to Lebanon. I concluded personally, some disagreed, but I thought that because of these circumstances, it will be inevitable for Netanyahu to wage a major war on Lebanon. And during the period of the ceasefire, we saw the Israelis on average kill 3 Palestinians a day in Gaza, maybe one Lebanese citizen a day in Lebanon. And I thought it was inevitable that we would have war because, for the same reasons, that the issues have not been resolved. And we noticed when Netanyahu, with the open support of Washington, restarted this genocide, uh, that the head of Shin Bet was removed, and that the coalition became stronger. The coalition that new members came back to the and strengthened the Netanyahu coalition. So the current genocide was there to strengthen Netanyahu. Now Netanyahu has become very powerful. He is he is much more powerful, at least on paper, than he ever was before. But I think personally that Israel has been greatly weakened. First of all, because the world has now detests Israel, and the world has opened their eyes to what really is going on in Palestine. People who never even knew what was happening in Palestine, they open their eyes and they see the reality. In the past, many people just thought that there was a conflict between two groups of people about a piece of land, and that was it. But now, along much of the propaganda doesn't work anymore, and even in the West. And actually, I think this new wave of authoritarianism in the United States, where this woman professor was expelled from the country, a physician, because she had a photo or photos of Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah's funeral or of himself, uh, or the fact that they're expelling people who were Palestinian, pro-Palestinian activists, and this authoritarianism, behind it is the Israeli regime, or it's the Zionist lobby, to be more precise. And this push in the United States to shut down debate altogether, I think is a sign of weakness. I think it shows that the Zionist lobby, the Israeli regime, do feel very vulnerable. They do feel that they're much weaker than before. And the United States is their last supporter. And it's the place where the media is the mass media is more effective, and Zionism has a stronger foothold. But even there, they're losing popular support. So imagine how it is in the rest of the world. But by doing this, the Zionist lobby is angering many people even more because people are seeing that their rights are being taken away from them because of the Israeli regime. TikTok, of course, but now it's becoming worse. I see all of this as a sign of Israeli weakness. The regime has been delegitimized, as I said, in the eyes of much of the world. It has been economically battered. It has been militarily battered. Of course, Hezbollah has been hit hard. Of course, Hamas has been hit hard. Of course, Ansarullah, they suffer when uh, women and children are bombed or when buildings are bombed. But as in all wars, everyone is weakened. The Russians are weakened. But compared to NATO and Ukraine, Russia is stronger. It has emerged much stronger. When you lose men, when you spend money, when you lose resources, you are weakened. You may have $10,000 in your pocket and you spend $2,000. You still have $8,000, but you've lost $2,000. But if the person opposed to you has lost everything, he's lost all his money, then you emerge stronger. Although you're not as strong as you were, let's say, before. So in war, everyone is weakened. But I think that the Israelis have been weakened the most. And again, I think that the very fact that we're seeing this sort of behavior inside the United States is a sign of that weakness.
What is the because well in the media now there is some commentary that for example in the Washington Post they noted today that hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, and in the past they would have covered a little bit better up for this. That being said, the British nonetheless refused to argue that Israel's Gaza aid blockade is illegal. That it risks becoming illegal, breaking international law. This is as far as they can go. Uh, but what is the reason? Is there any reasoning behind this except starving out the population, or how do they attempt to legitimize this? Is this simply arguing that weapons could be part of the food, or how? When they turn off the electricity, when they block now the food shipments, and you have hundreds of thousands of children as well, risking malnourishment, so starvation. What is the because again, it is very absent from the media. So where is the discussion to be had? Where is the argument, well, essentially for this kind of tactics?
Well, there is a big divide in Israel, but it's not about genocide. The opposition to Netanyahu overwhelming, according to polls, not according to hearsay, they support what is being done to the Palestinian people. But their differences with one another is ideological, it's their worldview, it's the more Ashkenazi European Jews against the growing power of the religious Zionists. So they were secular Zionists versus the religious Zionists. And now the religious Zionists uh, are gaining the upper hand. And apparently, those who are immigrating from Israel, which are substantial in number since October the 7th, they're mostly of the liberal European sort. That is my understanding. Of course, I'm not sure about that. But this itself sort of tilts the balance of power towards the more religious fanatics, Zionist fanatics. But so the internal debate is not about doing this. They're for it, so there's no problem with that. But what I think it does is that even though outside there are strong supporters of this, the Wall Street Journal, I think, their editorial board gave a pro-genocide article. I haven't read it. I've heard that they've done that. I'll have to take a look. So they do have these people in the West too, uh, who support the genocide. But I think that reviving this genocide is going to hurt the Israeli regime more than before, because for well over a year we saw slaughter taking place morning till night and from night till morning. We'd wake up and see new images in our Twitter feed or whatever. I've been removed from Facebook and Instagram, so I only have a Twitter account. But you go to bed at night, you see more images. But after it stopped, people across the world, I imagine, they had a collective sigh of relief. True, the Israelis were still killing people on a daily basis and violating the agreement and preventing food from getting in, but we didn't see the images that we were seeing for over a year. But after a while, it does become normal. It gets normalized, even though it's horrible. It's disgusting, but it's been going on for 6 months, and you see more images and so on. But still the same thing. But then after it stops and people have a sigh of relief, a collective sigh of relief, and then it starts again, the outrage becomes greater. And I think that the Israeli regime is hurting itself more than even more by reviving all the memories that the collective memories that the international community has of the last year and a half. But I still think that this has a lot to do with the coalition. It has to do with Netanyahu. This is all about Netanyahu. Netanyahu is winning. There's no doubt about that. But Israel, I think, is losing. Netanyahu, for the last year and a half, he's played his hand, his cards, very well to stay in power, but he is destroying the regime. And I think that people will not. I think that people will not forget this. What is going on, and Israel has been permanently destroyed as a country, as the image of Israel has been permanently destroyed. It's like apartheid South Africa. The West supported the apartheid regime, and Nelson Mandela was a terrorist, and so was the ANC, and so were all the other groups. Actually, Nelson Mandela, when he was freed, he became president. His presidency ended, and he was still on the terror list in the United States.